All right, we're going to get started in just a little bit. And our main focus on this live stream today is going to be um, the servicing. There I am. The servicing and the optimization of the Singer Bakelite Featherweight, first introduced back in the 1930s. So, if you got a Singer Featherweight type Bakelite controller, or they go with a number of the other Singers as well, you can go ahead and pull it out and go step by step with me if you'd like. We're going to take it apart, we're going to clean it, and then we're going to reassemble it again. So, that might take the whole time. If it doesn't, then I'll get into some of the differences between the 221 and the 222K and give you some service tips on that as well. Okay. All right. See you in a little bit. Well, happy Tuesday, everyone, as we come together to learn a little bit more about this thing that's underneath our foot that oftentimes we don't give much attention to until something goes wrong. And so, a lot of this live stream today is going to be focusing on preventive maintenance for the Bakelite foot controller that hasn't changed a lot since its introduction back in the 1930s. And the introduction came really on the scene with the introduction of the featherweight that was introduced. Does anyone remember the year that the featherweight was introduced, where it was introduced? And if you really want to impress me and the other leadership team members, tell us what the theme of that event was where that featherweight was introduced. So if you can do that, that'll be pretty doggone impressive. That means you've been taking good notes. So, but at any rate, go ahead and add that to the live chat if you would. If one of the leaders wants to add it, if they know it, that's fine as well. And then we'll move forward with taking one of these foot controllers apart piece by piece, and you'll be able to gain an appreciation for, I talk about it all the time, how the motor and the foot controller are essential components of the machine, and they require servicing just like any other part of the machine as well. You'll see that today, I think, today in the live stream. Okay. I hate to interrupt Mozart, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, what you've seen me do so far is very, very basic, obviously. I've taken out the 4 screws on the bottom that hold the rubber feet on, and I've gone ahead and also removed the little rubber cushion boots that give the Bakelite foot controller a little bit more of a non-skid surface. And now we're going to focus on digging deeper into this foot controller so that we can take it apart and do some deep servicing on it as well. Now, as I said earlier, this foot controller pretty much came on the scene with the Featherweight. And I'm not looking in detail at the chat right now, but if someone said the Featherweight came on the scene around 1933-34 at the Chicago World's Fair, and it was introduced there with the theme of the Chicago World's Fair of a century of progress. And so the Featherweight was seen as a progressive, innovative instrument used by the ladies of the day primarily, and certainly later adopted and embraced by every living creature walking the earth. I've seldom met a person that says that they wouldn't love to have a Featherweight. And you saw in the opening of this, I've got 2 Featherweights on the workbench right now. I've got this Centennial Featherweight 221 that belongs to Susie. And then I also have her 222K on the far end of the workbench over there. And like I said, if we get done with this servicing regimen for the Bakelite foot controller, I'll go ahead and move a little bit more into talking about the optimization points on these little princesses of Singer, and certainly the Queen of Singers as well. It's going to have quite a few service points. And if you're brand new to us, when I say Princess of Singers, I'm referring to the standard Featherweight, this one right here, even though it does have the Centennial badge. And if I'm referring to the Queen of Singers, I'm referring to the 222K on the far end of the workbench. So those are the reference points. If you're brand new and you're saying, why is he talking about princesses and queens? What's that about? Well, now you know. So let's dig deeper in this foot controller now. The other thing I'm going to tell you is that the very first foot controller that would have come out with that Featherweight back in 1933, at least the first 200 or so of those machines would not have looked identical to this one. It would have had a single button, and it would have been rated at a different amperage than this one is. And most of you probably know, because I've covered it so many times, the amperage rating on the standard Featherweight style foot controller, and certainly the same one that would have gone with the 222K, is rated at 0.7 amps. Does anyone know what the amperage rating on the very first Bakelite style foot controller that would have come out in the early 1930s with those very first Featherweights that were introduced at that Chicago World's Fair, with the theme again of a century of progress? So a couple questions for you. Go ahead and jump in if you know the answers, type it into the live chat. And then we're going to be launching into this service regimen on this Featherweight foot controller. All right, that was our little musical interlude there, almost like an intermission. So let me do this. Let me scroll to the top, and I'll say some good mornings to everyone, and I'll see what kind of answers you came up with. Let me check this out here. Well, obviously, a good morning, first of all, to Susie from Minnesota, who was the first in the live chat today. I thought that Tim or maybe Alex out in California would beat her, because I saw when I click live that the live chat showed up and she didn't jump in right away, almost as if she was taunting those that would be wanting to get ahead of her in the live chat, but she was the first one today. So looking forward to it. But Erin Allen out of Vermont, she was also in the live chat almost in close succession to Susie. So a special good morning to my dear friend Erin out of the beautiful state of Vermont. Let's see who else we have. We also have Kevin, Kevin from Sweden. So it's great to have Kevin here from the beautiful country of Sweden. Let's see who else. Also, good morning to Mark as well, Mark Anderson. And I've already acknowledged Alex and his lovely wife out in sunny California. Great to have them always here. Who else do we have? I think those are the only folks that I see in the live chat right now. The only folks I see in the live chat. So, all right, so let's get into this foot controller. And I don't have a Swedish beauty foot controller in this temporary workshop. Otherwise, I would highlight some of the service points on that as well. Maybe I should do that in a future live stream when I make another trip back to the storage unit where all of my stuff is being housed right now, and then I can cover the servicing on the Swedish foot controller, and maybe a couple of other foot controllers as well, because they all have their own differences, their own nuances. Okay, so my little layout here. Oh, and I didn't answer the question. Sorry. So the earliest foot controller that would have been introduced in conjunction with the introduction of the Princess of Singers at that Chicago World's Fair back in 1933, it would have been a one-button foot controller and was primarily connected with the very first 100 of featherweights that were rolled out of the factory in 1933. And it also would have had a different amperage tolerance. I've already shown you that the amperage tolerance of this foot controller that we're going to be disassembling and reassembling today has an amperage tolerance of 0.7. The earliest foot controller introduced with the featherweight would have had an amperage tolerance of only 0.6 amps, which is okay because the motor has always been 0.4 amps. And as long as the foot controller is rated higher than the motor, you're good to go. And the only reason that Singer, right around probably the mid 1950s to the 1960s, rolled out with a foot controller like this with the higher amperage tolerance is because they wanted to plug it into their other models that had larger motors. So it really was a cost savings to come up with a universal type foot controller, Bakelite style, that would be able to support everything from the original featherweight all the way through the 201-2s and a variety of other Singer models that use this as well. And there's different flavors of this one with just very subtle differences. This one was manufactured and made in the US. You have ones like this that were made for the 222K featherweight that were made, actually, a lot of people would say right away, well, they were made in Kilbowie, Scotland, right? Actually, the foot controllers for the 222K, the queen of Singers, as I refer to it, and many others do as well, the foot controllers for these very, very rare free arm featherweight machines were actually made in Canada. They were actually made up around the neck of the woods where Christine, one of our leadership team members, is from. And you'll see that right on the back on the data plate when you look at it. Instead of saying made in the USA, on the bottom right, it'll say made in Canada. There it is. And these, for all practical purposes, you could use either one of these foot controllers with either one of the machines. The only difference is the innards are designed just slightly different with a different molding approach to the ceramic Bakelite cover. You're going to see that when you open one from Canada, that was primarily designed and made for their celery colored featherweights. It was also made with the idea of attaching it to their 222Ks. It's going to have more of almost a grayish look instead of this white color. But apart from that, the innards are very, very similar. Also, on the ones out of Canada, you'll notice that instead of having access to these two screws where you can take this assembly out, they've actually molded over them to try to discourage people from unscrewing them accidentally, thinking, oh, I've got to take this one out, this one, and this one, and I probably have to take these out as well. And then this kind of under spring load kind of pops out of alignment. So in Canada, they molded over these so that people couldn't mess around with them. at least not accidentally. So, all right, let's go back over here and let's get into this. So the next thing I'm going to show you is that this featherweight controller is actually fine-tuned pretty well right now. As we're looking at this end part right here, you can see it's just about flush with the edge. Sometimes you'll see featherweight and these Bakelites where you'll open them up, and at a resting point, when this is not being depressed, at a resting point, this will be sometimes in as far as that. You can see that from the edge. And I've talked about this in other live streams. The issue with this being too far in at a resting point is it'll leave this circuit open, and it'll cause this ceramic body to become incredibly hot, and it could actually get so hot that it could cause a fire. So when we put this back together, I'll talk a little bit more about aligning this properly and adjusting it, and that way you'll have a controller that will serve you well and will be safe as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this little clip out right here. There's a little clip. It holds this assembly together. Kind of pop this out. This one's kind of tight. It's really, really snug. There we go. So I've got this little cotter pin type thing pulled out. I'm going to add that to my little tray, magnetic tray, so that we don't lose any parts. And now we're going to focus on taking these two screws out next, so we can separate the two halves. And you'll notice when you take this out that there's going to be some insulators on the bottom, and we'll want to make sure that we put those back in when we take this apart and put it back together. Also, there's a little rounded washer on top, and it's pretty obvious the way it should sit, like this, not like this, when you reassemble it again. And you just rotate this up, and then you can slide this assembly out. This is going to be the assembly that we focus on most today during this live stream. And these are those little insulators on the bottom. And these are non-asbestos. They're a cloth type material. So don't be concerned about, inhaling asbestos or something like that. These are safe. I'll just leave this here, and we'll deal with this afterwards and service it. There's several lubrication points. And you can see this one, unlike the other one I showed you in the other video, I believe it was, this one, the spring is actually in the proper position on top. It hasn't slid down like on some of them. Move that to the side. Okay, now we're going to start taking this assembly apart. I'm going to go ahead and take this little brass end off. There we go. Now I'll have to work on getting this part off so we can pull this stem out. Otherwise, we won't be able to access the openings easily. And also, we're going to have to do a little bit of grinding on this. When they do the molding process on this with the ceramic material, they seal over the screw points. So we're going to have to grind that out so we can get to those screw heads and actually take them out. But for right now, we're just going to focus on trying to get this little nut loosened. Grab my Leatherman, and we'll work on loosening that, and then we'll take this stem all the way off. And another thing easier to do sometimes is I'll take these little brass ends off because they're really filthy anyway, and we're going to clean those also. So we'll take those off and we can extend this out a little bit further. Just show you what we've taken off. And these will end up actually polishing up. Uh, these are really, really crudted up pretty badly. And one of the initial points of the foot controller to detect that electricity. So right now they're in real bad shape. We'll address that as well. Push this in and see if I can give this a little bit of a turn to give us a little bit more space to work with. Otherwise, we'll just loosen it this way. I'm going to get a shorter screwdriver. That one's kind of long. This has some sort of an adhesive on here that somebody added. So it was hard to kind of break that free. Most often they're going to break free very easily without too much effort. Almost got it to a point now where we can kind of turn it a little bit easier. And this is part of the reason that sew and vacs don't do this depth of service on the foot controller is it is a time-consuming process. It takes a little bit of patience, a little bit of endurance. And so they, with their quick little loop process, they're not going to take time to tackle something like this. Almost to the end, getting really close. And I'm curious as we're doing this together, if anyone has done this service on their machines before, because I have presented this before, but it's been quite some time ago. quite some time ago that I showed this process. So curious if anyone has seen it before, if anyone has done it before. You see how filthy this gets. We'll take our little nut off now as well, and then we'll finally be able to separate these two halves. And you're going to see that this is two pieces as well. One is going to be a fiberglass type material that's very resistant to heat. The other one is going to be our connection point. So we can actually take these two apart, and we're going to go ahead and clean and service those as well. I'll just set them up here for right now. So now we can, after removing this end, now we can push this piece out, and there's a spring on there. So just watch for that spring as you take it apart. And you can see the spring is also a service point as well. I talk about springs because of the heat factor. They can get a little bit compressed, and then they don't return with as much action. So one of the things we'll do is we'll probably just gently add a little bit of length to this, just so the action of this foot controller for Susie is going to work even better. Put that in there right now. And you'll see that these little fan points can actually come off of here, like so. And you can spread them open like this then. So we can polish and clean both the copper side and also this metal side as well. This is all going to be part of the connection field. So we'll service both of these, get them nice and cleaned up so that they don't look like my hands. And then we're going to start to focus on getting deeper into this foot controller. And that's going to require that we be able to get into, we're going to have to be able to get into these little portals right inside of here. Both of these wells have little tiny discs like this inside of them. I don't know if you can see that in my hand or not. These are carbon discs. And the way the Bakelite foot controllers are set up is there's two vertical wells of these very, very super thin, wafer thin carbon discs. And what they do is they support the electrical field as that foot controller is depressed. And they allow that electricity to flow through them and to give you the equivalent of a rheostat. They act like a rheostat, that large stack of these. And they allow that electricity to be regulated with the fluctuation of the actuator on there. But these things are incredibly fragile. They're only about a 0.5 millimeter thick, I think is what I've found out using the caliper. Let me see again. Yeah, they're about 0.5 millimeter thick. So incredibly fragile. And the cleaning process we're going to use today is going to take into account how fragile these are. And does anyone know in each of these columns, as we're looking at this this Bakelite base here, in each of these columns, there's a bunch of these in there. Does anyone know how many are in each column? How many of these are in each column on this foot controller? If anyone knows that, go ahead and type that in the live chat, if you would. And you can see right here in the molding of this this Bakelite porcelain base, what they've done is they've sealed off. I'm going to see if I can get where the light is even a little bit better. They've sealed off these openings to get to the screw. There you can see them better. They've sealed this and they've sealed that. And without taking that sealant out of there, we're not able to go any further at this point because we can't take these screws out. The screw head is covered up in this base from the porcelain molding process. So we're going to have to take that plug out and that plug out in order to go any further so we can get a look at those discs that are inside of here. And Susie's saying probably around, is that, what does that say, 1,777? Or 177, maybe 177. Oh, I think that's a 177 question mark. I'm a little ways away from the laptop, so it's a little bit hard to see. You're really close. You're really, really close. there's going to be in each column about 75 of those tiny little discs. So 75 here, 75 here, 75 here. And one of the discs in each of these columns is going to be a little bit different than all the other discs. And that's the thing that we have to watch for. You're going to have about 74 standard discs like this one. And then in each column, to support the base pressure of that foot controller pressing against there, you're going to have one carbon disc that is about 2 times thicker. And we'll look at that closer once we get into this. But right now, we have to work on getting this plug out of here so that we're able to actually get to those screws that are underneath here. So I'm going to grab the Dremel now. We're going to work on trying to get that cleaned out. And I've got to change Dremel heads as well. And if you're working with a Dremel, I know it seems kind of common sense, but make sure you have eye protection when you're working with a Dremel as well. Cover your eyes and protect your eyes. Okay, so let me get this one plugged out. And we'll go with a different Dremel head that hopefully will allow us to get into there and clean some of that out. And this is the type of Dremel head that I'm going to be using. It's a brush that's designed for polishing, but you can also use it to bore in there and clean some of that stuff out, that old ceramic material that's covered up those screw heads right now. All right, where did I put? There it is. And I'm going to lay down a towel just so I don't get my other surface dirty while we're going through this. Lay this towel down here. And again, what we're doing now is we're trying to get these screws visible so that we're going to be able to clean these chambers out and get those discs out. So let's give it a go. So we've got one that's looks like it's pretty visible. We'll go ahead and also use our dental tool to clean out that groove so that we don't break that screw or damage it. And there's our screws that were covered up by that extra porcelain casting material. When they mold it, they just go right over the top of those screws. So now we've got a fairly clean surface to work with, but we're going to dig that little groove out on those screws as well so that we can get a real good bite with the screwdriver to take out those screws. And we'll use our dental tool for that. Get some of that porcelain material that gets into that that groove as well, and we want to be able to get that screwdriver all the way in there so we can take these out more easily. And obviously, porcelain materials are very strong, but you also want to be careful working with them because it can crack. And if this cracks, you're pretty much done. You'll have to replace it. There we go. I think that's a pretty clean groove now to work with. We should be able to get a screwdriver in there. And you'll notice how the grooves are different widths. The one on where my finger is quite a bit wider. The one on the other side is a little bit more narrow. So we want to try to use a screwdriver that's appropriate in size. We've got that one loose nicely. See if we can do the same thing on this side. And just be aware as you're taking these screws out, that's the only thing holding these plates in place that are holding all those discs in there. So I would kind of angle it either that or slide your fingers in there and just hold those plates in place so that when you get those screws out, you're not going to be dropping these little discs all over the place. There's our first screw or our first bolt, I should say, that just came out. And we'll leave the other one in for a second so I can show you that column here as we take it out. So this one is free moving now. I'm going to use these tweezers to lift this out very carefully. There's a little retaining plate that holds that into place. See that right there? And then a little buffer here that holds those discs in place. And now if we tilt this over, we'll be able to lay all these discs out. I'm going to go ahead and set these right here. Set that there. And there are those discs. There's about 75 of them. And I can see by looking at these, they're filthy. A lot of that carbon dust has broken down. I'll see if I can get a little bit closer and show you. A lot of that carbon dust is broken down. And what it does then is it sticks to those discs and it retains the heat. You can see the ones that are really dark. Those are the ones that are really, really filthy right now. These on the end are a little bit cleaner. And we'll be doing the same thing with the other side as well, getting those discs out, and then we'll start the cleaning process very carefully with them. Also, we're going to have to clean this ceramic space as well on the inside because there's a lot of carbon dust, as you can see from my hands. So let's work on getting this other one out now. We got our little bolt out. Now we'll use our tweezers to remove that little plate, the little retainer plate. And also this little boot that holds those discs in place. So if you've never seen the inside before, that's what it looks like right there. And we've got to clean that out real thoroughly to get all that extra carbon dust out of there. I'm going to set this to the side for just a moment, just kind of give you a scope of what we have going on so far. All right, so let's concentrate on cleaning these two sections up first that this is going to be reattached to. We'll just kind of go over these and get the extra dust and dirt off of these. We'll go ahead and lubricate these points as well that need to be lubricated. And then we'll shift over to these little discs that have to be cleaned individually. And that's, again, why folks that do servicing on sewing machines have probably never even seen this before, because it's so labor intensive. Okay, so I'm going to grab my little cloth. We'll clean this up a little bit first. Change this angle just a little bit so we can. And when you're spraying liquid like this, make sure you're spraying it away from these discs. These discs are not, they're not able to withstand any moisture. The carbon will actually break down, and then the disc will become very brittle. So if you're spraying anything or you have any liquid around, just keep it away from the discs. I'm just kind of cleaning this up a little bit, getting all that extra dust and dirt off of there. And then we'll service the key points on the foot controller as well. There we go. Not too bad. Got a little bit of that carbon and dirt off of there. Now we're going to focus on getting this ceramic assembly cleaned up. I've already got this dampened with a little bit of Windex type material. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and see if I can push it down into that well. I usually use a Q-tip, but I'm going to try this to see how well it works. So I just pushed a cotton swab down there. Little cotton ball, push it all the way down. Get that well nice and clean. Where we're going to be putting those ceramic discs back, or excuse me, those carbon discs back in after we service them. Do the same thing with this side. You can see all the carbon dust that builds up in there. And what's the big deal about the carbon dust, you might say? The big deal about the carbon dust is it retains heat. And that's why over time, typically a Bakelite foot controller will operate warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer, and eventually it will fail because the internal heat becomes so intense, it usually causes that ceramic base to crack or causes some other type of failure. So you want to be aware of that. And, I would say doing maintenance once a year, almost like spring cleaning, might be a good routine to get into. with your foot controller. And once you've done it a couple of times, it's not nearly as daunting. I know I posted some pictures on Facebook and everyone was like, oh my gosh, it looks like a nightmare. I've got to try that sometime in my lifetime. And they make it sound like it's a big deal. And it is. It takes time. But at the same time, it becomes like anything you do, muscle memory. It becomes a lot more routine to take a task on like this and get it done much more quickly. And obviously, when you're trying to explain it and demonstrate, it's going to take longer than when you're not. So I've got to try to get that cotton swab back out. I let go of it while I was talking, and let me see if I can get a different pair of tweezers. Otherwise, we'll do this. Good old dental tool should be able to get underneath it and hook it, pull it back up easily enough. There we go. And now I think I'll do some Q-tips as well, because you can get a lot of the bulk stuff out, but the Q-tips are going to give you a little bit more control in getting in there. And I haven't looked at the live chat. I don't know if anyone has taken this task on before and you want to share what your experience was in doing it. You may have seen me do it in a different live stream or a video back in the day. That's how a lot of people have kind of taken it on. So now we've done a pretty good job of cleaning the ceramic base that is going to house these carbon discs. And we've done a good job of cleaning the mounting base as well. That's the mechanical component of the foot controller. See a couple spots that I missed here. There we go. I think that's a good job. So I'm going to set these to the side now. I think we've done a decent job of cleaning these inside and out. So now we'll concentrate on these little carbon discs. Set these to the side. So I mentioned before that there's about approximately 75 discs in each column that's housed inside of here. 75 here, 75 here. And one of the discs, you have to kind of, depending on how they pour out when you dump them out, you have to look for that one that's on the bottom that's going to be different. You remember that program when we were watching it as kids and they were trying to teach us objects and the names of objects, and they would say, which one is different? Which one doesn't belong? Well, on the bottom of each one of these bases, when we dump it out on the very bottom, closest to here, right on the bottom here, opposite that screw that we took out, there's going to be a disc that's about 2 times the thickness so that it can support the weight of all those other discs. So that's the one that we need to look for so that we make sure that we put it back in correctly. And it's this one right here. I'll show you with the tweezers, if I can, the difference between the two. It's pretty noticeable. But a lot of people, if they're doing this for the first time and they're not paying attention, they're not going to see the difference between the two, and they're going to put them in wrong. And then what will happen is, under the weight and the pressure, the thinner discs are going to crack. So the one on the camera side right is the base one. See it? The one on your left, as you're looking at the camera, or looking at the screen rather, that thinner one is going to be one of the standard discs, the other 74 that are going to be part of that grouping. But the thicker one you need to put on the bottom to support the weight. This is your foundation one, and these are your supplemental ones that go into that stack as well. Make sense? I hope. Yeah, so the thick one supports all the weight. So in a visual sense, you can imagine that stack supporting. This is going to be our base one right here, and all the other ones are going to be on top of it, like so. And they all need to be clean. There lies the tedious part, right? So I'm going to get my base one and separate it. That's our base one right there. Now we need to find our other base one in this row over here. And there it is. There's our base one right here. That's going to be designed to support the weight of all those other discs. So as we put them back in eventually, once we've done our cleaning process on them, we put them back in, and we put them back in here in these openings up here and here. That base one is going to go in first. The base one will go in first so that it's on the very bottom of here. And then all the other discs will be stacked up on top of them. So we'll have a thin disc going all the way down, and then on the very bottom here, in the bottom of that stack and that stack, we'll have that thicker one to support the weight and the pressure of all those other discs. Okay? All right. I'm going to get a quick little drink of Diet Coke. You can digest, in a sense, what we talk about, and then we're going to get into the deep cleaning of this foot controller. And yeah, and you can then request a T-shirt and say, I did it. I did a deep cleaning on a Bakelite foot controller. It really is kind of a tough thing to do, so, or at least tedious. All right, got one message, it looks like. Let's see, Aaron, I apologize. This came in a while ago. I missed it. I apparently don't have my notifications on. Aaron was asking if the rubber feet on the controller prevent static shock. Rubber is resistant to static to some degree, but really the risk of static is going to be above the foot controller, where the cord leads into the machine, and that field of electricity is being basically preserved in this area. This will be a bigger area right here for static, and really any other part of the machine. But the rubber things were put on there just to keep the foot controller from slipping, depending on the type of foot surface you're on. And it's really, for those people that's so barefooted, it's not going to do a lot to keep you from getting shocked if there's an electrical issue with your foot controller. So, yeah, the rubber feet are great. And over time, they do wear out. These do crack and these do wear out over time. And I know that they are available online. You can buy replacement rubber feet for the foot controllers if yours are getting worn down, if they're getting cracked, if they're otherwise not serviceable. The Featherweight shop and other places like that do offer these as an aftermarket so that you can replace them on your foot controllers, but not so much static. Again, the best way to reduce static, especially in the winter, is to take a spray bottle similar to this with water. And before you sit down to sew, if there's carpeting in your sewing space, doing a light mist of spritz of water over the carpeting area leading up to your sewing space. The entire room, basically, a little track. It's going to lower that static level significantly in the room. And if you're dealing with a more computerized machine that has boards in it, you might even want to consider if you've got some sort of a material underneath the machine, moving the machine out of the way and just doing a light spritz, as you've seen me doing some of the live streams and when I'm working with the computerized machines, just a light spritz over that carpet area that the machine sits on. Let that moisture wick away for a moment or so, and then just set the machine back down. But static can be very, very damaging. I read somewhere that a static charge, let me see if I can find it again. How many volts are in a static charge?
According to ScienceDirect.com, a static charge can have a potential of 10,000 volts, but because it has a very small current potential, it can be safely dissipated through proper bonding and.
So whether or not you believe everything you read on the internet, if anyone's ever touched a light socket or something else and gotten that static zap, it can downright hurt. And at least according to this one resource, certain types of static charges can carry as much as 10,000 volts, 10,000 volts, but it's in a very, very limited capacity as far as the density and the volume of it. So it might be a quick, hard zap that downright hurts, but it's not going to be like touching a live wire or something like that. But you can eliminate most of that, especially in the winter time, by just gently spritzing a little bit of water through an aerosol type bottle on the carpet, and then also in the immediate space if you have that machine setting on a carpeted type surface. Kind of like this surface here you see might carry a little bit of a static charge as the winter sets in. Susie had picked this up at Menards, and it's an outdoor type carpeting, but it's got a nice little cushy surface on it, and it's nice to have underneath the machines and that as you're working on them. But yeah, static can be dangerous, can be very, very dangerous. And so, yeah, just be aware that it's there. And especially if you're in a drier climate like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, maybe, that static can be even more intense than other parts of the country. So, all right. you can see you can see here how sources disagree. This source is saying 10,000 volts. This source is saying 20,000 volts. This source is saying 5,000 volts. So it doesn't matter. if you ever gotten zapped by a static electricity charge, it doesn't matter where it's 5, 10, or 20. It downright can hurt when you're touching that, that surface, whatever it is. So great question by my dear friend out of Vermont. And yeah, just take those simple steps and you'll be able to protect yourself a little bit better from static electricity, and also keep your machines safe, especially the computerized ones that have the circuit boards. All right, I've got my notifications on now, so if I get any more text messages, I won't miss them, hopefully. All right, just going to check one other thing real quick, and then I'll get a drink of soda and we'll move forward. And I'm assuming I would have heard by now if we have any audio issues, any video issues. Hopefully our audio is doing well today and our video is as well. Excuse me. one other quick response I have to send here, and then we'll move forward. Well, I hope you're finding this helpful so far. If you've never tackled uh, taking apart your Bakelite foot controller, and again, these Bakelites were introduced way back in the day in the 1930s for the Featherweights, and then that amperage tolerance on the foot controller went from 0.6 up to 0.7. So you'll find this type of foot controller that we're servicing today on a wide variety of different Singer machines, a wide variety, including the 201-2s that I recently showed you in the live streams. Ronnie's and then also Carol Johnson's as well are going to have the same type of foot controller. Okay, all caught up. I had something that was a little bit timely, so I needed to quickly send an answer back on something else. So, okay, I think we should be good to go. All right, put the phone back over there, get that out of the way. Now, there's a number of ways to get the base dust off of these discs, but whatever method you use, you've got to do it very delicately. The easiest one that I found so far, because you can control the pressure and still get a lot of controlled friction on the disc to get the coating off, so you've got a relatively clean disc, is going to be a copper type brush like this. It's used for polishing, and it's designed for the Dremel. You can either do it manually. We'll start with our base one that's a lot thicker. We can either do it manually and just hold the disc in place and lightly brush over it, like so. You can see on the top of there where we've removed a bunch of that junk that was on there. We still have to go around the rest of the disc. See those little scratch marks from the brush where we removed it? We got to do the same thing to the other side. I just had I don't know if it went past the camera or not. I just had a bug fly in. I'm going to capture the bug and put him to the side. There we go. Okay. I think that was a ladybug. Okay. So I'm just going to start cleaning these. And again, you can do it manually if you feel confident enough, because the brass is going to be much softer. Some of these brushes are made out of brass, some of them copper. Most of them are going to be brass. You can put this brush in, and what I have is I have a little section over here that I've taped off. I'll change the camera angle so you can see it. There it is right there. Probably should have moved it on the other side so that it's got a better camera view. There we go. That makes a little bit more sense from the camera standpoint. So again, you can do it manually, or if you're confident enough, you can set your Dremel at a real low speed, very, very low speed, as low as it'll go. And then what I was doing before on another one of the machines is I would hold the edge of it and I would just gently brush over it with the Dremel. Very, very little pressure. Very little pressure. I'll turn down really low. You notice I'll have the Dremel angled. I've got it almost horizontal or um, perpendicular to the top of the disc, so that the pressure is just whisper light. And you're not going to get it absolutely like it's brand new because carbon degrades. But we're able to get a lot of that off if you look at that the way it is now compared to the way it was. We're able to clean a lot of that surface off. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to use this little brush surface in the middle. This almost has a soft brush. And I'm just going to gently draw this down both ways. Yeah, I think that'll give us a real good base. Now, the reality is, and this is where a live stream can go on for eons, is you've got to do this to every one of the discs that's dirty, but not all the discs are going to be dirty with carbon dust. Some of them are going to be free of it because of the position in the stack that they were located. So what I do is I pick out the ones that are good so I can eliminate those as far as needing to be deep cleaned. Ones like this one right here. See if I can hold it very carefully. You see, this one is all but clean. So I'll just bring it over this little brush area right here in the middle just to get any residual dust off of there. And again, very, very light pressure, very, very light pressure. This material right here is the same stuff that's on the workbench. If you were wondering what this little strip is, it's a real soft, almost a terry surface. So it doesn't cause any damage to the disc, dragging it over like this to get that extra carbon dust off. And then just add it to the stack over here. So what? We've done 2 and we only have 148 to go. 148 to go, but hopefully not all of them are dirty. The ones that are pretty clean, I'm just going to quickly go over them. And I'll probably put on a little bit of music too, because otherwise you're going to go stir crazy. Watch me go through this meticulous process probably. All right, let me see if I can find some music for us. Something calming. And I'm using a dry Q-tip just because this one has a little bit more dark stuff that I'm trying to wipe off of there after I polish it up. Yeah, a little bit more music. Yeah, there's no shortcut to this if you're going to do it properly. These are the ones that are clean now, along with our base carbon disc. And we've got to go through the rest of these. We've got to go through all of these. So what is it? Inch by inch, row by row, right? What else do we have? Looking for something that's going to run for a while. Irish music. That might get reckless if I do Irish music. Well, let's do a little bit of German polka. Why not, right? German polka for cleaning discs. See, one side can be great. Boy, is that dirty on that side. Look at that. It looks like they color with a marker. It's all carbon dust. Very, very light touch. Very light touch. To give you a contrast, look at these two side by side. This one is about halfway done. Aha, I dropped one. First one. Aha, got it. It is a tedious process. What I've decided to do is, for sake of time, let me turn this off for a second. All right, music off for a second. What I've decided to do is I'm going to go through all 75 of these. We've already cleaned the base one, and I'm going to reassemble this with this dirty row in the foot controller. The reason I'm going to do that is for sake of time. We're already at an hour and 46 minutes in the live stream. You've seen how I clean this row. You're going to do exactly the same thing to the other one. And then after the live stream, I'll take the foot controller apart and I'll clean this row over here so that it's tip top for Susie's Centennial Featherweight. But I don't want to take you through another 75 over here when you've already seen the process done here. So we'll finish these, and then we'll go into the process of reassembling the foot controller, knowing that I'm going to clean this row after the live stream. Okay. I think that probably makes the most sense so that you're not like, oh my gosh, another 75. Are you kidding me? So again, the thing to emphasize is it's an incredibly critical part of maintaining your vintage sewing machine lineup. You've got to maintain it by doing this about once a year. If you've got an incredibly clean environment and you don't use your foot controller very often, or maybe like Susie's with her 222K, she's got a Bakelite, but she also has an electronic foot controller as well. So let's say you're only using the Bakelite one occasionally. Maybe you could stretch it to every other year. But you've seen the level of filth in here. You know that cleaning these discs thoroughly, like you've seen me do up to this point, is going to optimize this foot controller so it can deliver the energy to that motor to get the job done. With all of this gunk on here, not only is it generating a lot of heat, which is going to cause this foot controller eventually to fail, but it's also holding that electricity back. Remember, your foot controller is the gateway to your motor. Your motor is hungry. Your motor is wanting to get the job done. But if this foot controller is in the condition that you see it in right here, it's not going to be able to deliver the motor the energy that it needs. It's going to be depleting that electricity surge to that motor, and it's going to be holding that motor back. So in a future live stream, we're going to focus on that featherweight motor. I know I've talked to a couple people that have paid a very sweet gal. I guess she's along in years. She's probably in her 80s, and she does a class all around the country, I think quite a bit in Texas. And she takes people through a very deep cleaning on the featherweight. But some of the areas that I'm going to show you, she doesn't do it. And that's not to knock her. It's just to say that she covers areas and doesn't cover all the areas that the workshop does here. So watch for that. We're going to finish up the foot controller. I'll go through all of these that are still yucky, and we'll rebuild the foot controller. We'll test it on the Centennial Featherweight. I'm not going to actually stitch with it. I just fire it up just so you can see that it works. And then after the live stream, I'll focus on this row over here that is still very, very yucky. Still very yucky. So yeah, I think that's the fairest way to do it. So you get a clear picture of what to do, but you're not sitting there, watching grass grow. Watching grass grow as we go through like every single disc, that's my process. Do it right or don't do it at all, right? All right, let's keep the ball rolling here. I'll get through these and then we'll begin rebuilding this foot controller and tidying up the parts that are also equally essential to give this foot controller every chance to satisfy that hungry featherweight 0.4 amp motor. Okay? All right, here we go. My hand's going to sleep. Well, that is 75 discs that we just cleaned. Let's go over the final wipe on here to get that dust off of the surface. I've shown you before, when you grind off a surface and you tidy it up, you're going to have a dust left behind. So we're just kind of removing it. It's a nice terry type rug, just like the workbench, and it just draws that stuff off very nicely. That was a fun sound. Must be a Facebook notification. I posted a fun thing on Facebook, if you do Facebook, about the group AC/DC. If anyone is a rock fan or was a rock fan back in the day and you've ever heard of the group AC/DC, they got their name from a sister in England that had a sewing machine. You'll have to read it on Facebook. It's very interesting. And then, speaking of rock, there we go. I'm going to shut that off. Yeah, I found that popped up on my feed somehow, and I thought that was really cool. So we're doing our last swipe of these. And just so you don't think that these are super hardcore or anything. They're less than a millimeter thick, about a half a millimeter. They're wafer thin and incredibly fragile. So you might be looking at me handling these and go, wow, they must be pretty sturdy. They must be pretty strong. They're not. I'm really using a light touch as I'm going through these to clean them. So you'll have to do the same thing as you look to service your foot controller in the same way, giving it an incredibly light touch. Otherwise, you'll break them. They'll crack very easily. And that's the last one right there. So all of these have been serviced. All of these have not been serviced. When we put them back into the wells on here, I will make a mark on the one that hasn't been serviced with a permanent marker. I'll put a little dot. So when I go ahead and take it apart again, I can leave the other well alone, knowing that it's been done, and concentrate on the one that we didn't have a chance to do during the live stream. I'm going to clean my hands again, although I know handling these are going to get dirty all over again. And then we'll begin reassembling this foot controller. And hopefully, if you ever contemplated this or you heard me mention it, you're like, oh boy, that's too much to take on. It is a big undertaking. You don't want to have any little kiddos running around, grandchildren or others or pets. Find a quiet area and do it in isolation so that you can focus on what you're doing, so that you don't lose track of any of these little carbon discs, and you don't lose any of the other parts as well. It's easy to get distracted, isn't it? It's easy. So, all right. Just get the moisture off my hands. And we'll go ahead and begin the process of putting this controller back together again. I'm going to go ahead and, before I forget to do it, I'm going to go ahead and mark the well. I can actually mark it on this end. Maybe that's a little bit easier, then I can clean it easier too. I'm going to mark the well that is going to have the dirty discs put back in them. Put a little mark right there. So now we got our dirty one marked right there, and this will be our clean one on top. So when I take it apart, I remember which is which. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to swab that one more time. And again, if you use moisture like I'm doing on cleaning these wells, just make sure you go over it with a dry Q-tip to get any of that extra residue out of there. You don't want to put these discs back into a wet environment. Moisture with carbon is not a good combination. I'm going to swab that out one more time. Look at how many times we cleaned it, and yet still. Okay, so our dirty well is over there. I guess we can put our dirty ones away first, huh? Let's put our dirty ones back in first. And again, our base one is going to be this thicker one. If you joined us a little bit late, there in each of these columns, there's 75 discs. 74 of them are going to be like the one here. 2 of them, or I should say 74 in each column, are going to be like this one. The other one is going to be like that one. And we put this one on the bottom to support the weight of all those other discs, okay? So the first one I'm going to drop into the dirty well. This is our dirty well on this side. First one I'm going to drop in is our base one. Just kind of plop it in there. Make sure I got it down straight. They can sometimes land in an odd way, kind of on an angle, and you just have to kind of jiggle it gently and get them to lay out. A flashlight with its own mind. Don't you love it? There we go. Okay, perfect. So it's laying down very nicely. Now we're going to add all, that's our first disc. Now we're going to add the other 74. And I usually add them in just little groups, 3 or 4 at a time, and just kind of hold it on an angle and let them slide on in. I'm going to put this way so I don't Put them in the wrong one. Usually kind of go on the side like this, and they just kind of let them slide into place. Some of these are actually looking pretty good. I don't think it'll take me too terribly long, hopefully, afterwards. This side looks much better than the other side. Some of these are looking pretty spick and span. Just don't get over ambitious and grab like a huge chunk, because then they can tend to get caught, and you might have to dump them all back out and start over again, which would be, yeah, that'd be a little irritating, wouldn't it? Do, 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 do. Kind of watch as you put them in. Make sure that they're all laying down nice and flat. Again, these are going to distribute that heat evenly once they're clean, and they're also going to work in conjunction with the foot controller to act as a rheostat through those layers. So you want to make sure that they're positioned properly. I'll just show you from the angle there. You can see that we've got this well filled up. We've got the base one on the very bottom, and then we've got the other 74 going all the way to the top. Now we're going to we're going to put this on the angle here so it doesn't fall over or out. And now we have to go after the components that are going to hold that in place. This is one of them right here. This is the other. And then we need one of those bolts to go through, this one right here. This is going to basically screw in from the bottom and then attach to it like this and hold this in place so that those little discs don't go anywhere. Okay, so we got to tidy this up real quick. Even though we're putting it over dirty discs, we know that. We're going to still clean it anyway. And this section I usually kind of polish up. I'm going to use a different polisher for that, though. I'm not going to use this copper one, this brass one. I'm going to use my rounded one, this one here, to clean this up a little bit, along with some of the other parts that we're going to clean. We'll just polish this up a little bit, and we'll clean the retainer as well. You just look at that. I'm just going to show you real quick. The side that I polished is where the circle is. The other side is not. You can see right away all the gunk that builds up on these that inhibits that electricity flow. Let me set that down and put my hand behind it like this. Just like having dirty battery cables in a cold environment, dirty battery cables can just kill your car. And so we want to get that cleaned off. It's all part of the electrical field in the foot controller, and we want to get rid of anything that's going to hold that back. This I'm going to use rubbing alcohol on because it's got a carbon coating on it, and we don't want to go after that with the Windex. It might damage that. So we're going to go over that with some rubbing alcohol and get the surface clear of dust without causing damage to the surface. Let's see here. We'll go over this first just to get that residue off. And now I'm using another Q-tip to make sure that I don't leave any moisture behind. We want that to be moisture free. This I'm just going to polish up a little bit because remember there was a sticky substance on there that made it a little bit difficult to get that out of there. So we're going to just clean that up a little bit as well. You see all the basically overspray of that ceramic material that got on here too. We'll open up those threads so that they do their job more easily. We'll do a little bit more thorough cleaning of that opening that had all of that ceramic material blocking it when we first got into it. I dumped that over, didn't I? Oopsie daisy. Okay, now we'll start to put this back together. Again, this is our dirty row, correct? Yep, it is. Put our little retainer on top first, this piece right here. We'll add our piece like this, and you want the ribbed part to go up so that the threads can go, the threads of the screw can go through there. Hold on a second. There we go. Where's my tool that I was looking for? My little tweezers. Trying to get my eyes on the tweezers. I know I set them over here somewhere. Let's see here. Well, maybe I'll try it without the tweezers. Oh, here they are. I'm looking right at them. They're off camera. All right. I did this very easily off camera. There we go. Now we finally got it. So we're going to be like that. We've got all the discs back in that well. We've got the retainer on top. We've got this little clip that's going to be tightened down. And now we've got to bring the bolt in from underneath it. Hold it with your finger, the little clamp right here on the edge, so that you don't dump the discs. And hold that in place. And then come up from the bottom with the bolt and try to get it threaded onto that little retainer. Get my little screwdriver. A smaller one. I'm still learning the lay of the land in this temporary workshop, so if I seem a little bit awkward, you'll have to forgive that. So I'm holding that little retainer in, and I'm going to start threading it from this end with a screwdriver. Trying to get that little clamp to accept this screw and to hold those in place. So I've got it threading now. I can feel that coming through. You see the screw starting to come through here, the bolt. Until then, I was holding my finger on it so that that little thing doesn't come loose and I dump all the discs all over the place. We'll just keep tightening until it's nice and snug. Okay, so I've got that in place. And you want to adjust the alignment a little bit because it can pivot either way. Make sure that it's right on top of that stack of discs in a straight way. And it'll look like that. So now we need to put our clean discs in this one and do exactly what we just did on this side. I'm going to make a quick adjustment on here. Okay. So now we'll be adding our clean disc. We have to put our base one in first. Remember the thicker one? Thicker one goes in first on the bottom to support all that weight. And then we'll begin adding all of these on top of it, just like we did on the other side. And if you angle this just a little bit, if you angle it a little bit as you're dropping them in, it creates a little bit a more gentle, like a slide down into position so that they're not clumping and potentially you'll crack one. So okay, so we gotten all those lined up. Now we're going to do the same thing with that little plate, but we got to clean it up first. This time I'll try to be a little bit more careful and hopefully not knock those back out again. We'll move it over here. And we'll grab our pieces that we need. This one here. And that one. And this one. We'll tidy these up as well. And again, if you joined us a little bit late, just to show you again all the oxidation and junk that can build up on there. Look at the contrast, the rounded part that I just cleaned and the other part on the other side. It almost looks like it's black, doesn't it? And that's all going to hold back that electricity. So you got to get it cleaned up properly. Now we're going to be using a little bit of rubbing alcohol again to clean off the parts that we just polished and cleaned. And then we'll be targeting that retainer piece right there that's so essential, that has a carbon base to it. Add our retainer first. And again, you're going to be putting the rib part up. You see where this is a raised part on this end. That goes in the up position. Can adjust these tweezers a little bit. They just don't have quite enough bite. This one's bent out, so you just bend it in a little bit, then it'll have a stronger grip. There we go. I think that'll work a little bit better. So we've got that in position, but now we have to hold it while we screw in that bolt below so that those discs don't go tumbling out. Get that there and just hold it with my finger, and then come from below with the bolt so we can screw that in. Must have it just a little bit out of position because it's not threading in. I think that's better, maybe. So we've got that threaded in correctly now. I just have to tighten it down just a little bit more. Okay, and that's the finished product with all 150 carbon discs back in place, including the two base ones, which are down on the bottom here on both sides. And again, we know that this side is our dirt side, so once the live stream completes, I'll take these out and clean those like I did the other side. I'm just going to do a little bit more cleaning in the inside of here, and then we'll finish putting this together. All right, get our bolt out and our little fanner adjuster here. And we've got to polish this up as well. So I'm going to do this next. Move this over here. And what you hear me doing off camera is periodically I will take a towel and the brush and run it against here to get the extra carbon dust off of there so that we're not reintroducing it to the parts we're trying to polish and clean. So let's clean this first. And if you wondered if it was really worth cleaning, is it really going to get dirty? Dirty, clean. This is going to be a little bit more fragile because it's made out of copper. So just kind of put your finger underneath to support it so you don't bend it. Also have to take our spring and clean that as well. We already lengthened it out a little bit more. Yeah, and be careful. Springs do have a breaking point, so you don't want to stretch it too far. But it needs to have enough reverse tension so that foot controller engages and disengages properly. Remember, these are our brass contacts. We got to get those clean too. Our copper contacts. You see right now they're very, 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 very dirty. When these get really, really dirty, I'll just shut this off for a second. When these get really, really dirty, it will affect the output speed that your foot controller is able to generate because this is the main influx that's going to go into those chambers with those carbon discs that we just cleaned part of. So the electricity will be held back. It's almost like a clog. After you clean and polish something, you always go over it with some sort of a cleaning agent like Windex to get that extra dust off of there. Otherwise, you're going to be just putting it right back into that clean space again. We're going to start with this. Actually, I want to go the opposite way. So when we put this back together, what I did is I simply slid the spring back on and then slid it down into that center chamber like this. And we got one other piece. Where is it? There it is. You're working with something like this with a lot of fine motor skills. If you've ever done that, where you're working with something that's really intense like that, your hands start to go a little bit silly numb almost. So if you see me do a little fumble or something like that, I've been working really intently controlling those muscles in some delicate work. And any of you that have done work like that, you know what I mean. So next thing we're going to put on is our little nut. It sure goes on and off a lot better when it's clean, doesn't it? I'm just trying to see in the lighting here. And the offset on this nut, you're going to get to the very end right there. And it's going to be at the very end. You're going to want to go about 3 turns back from that point so you've got the right center point. 2, 3, right around, maybe closer to 4. So you'll have just about 3 threads on that side when you're putting the nut back into position. We have to add our other piece. Basically just backing it up to that nut that we have rotated in about 3 turns. Gets to be pretty tight in there, so I'm going to do my best to get it in the proper position. You get to a point where you can't turn it any further, so I'm just going to use this screw to get it in the rest of the way. There we go. It's going to look something like that. Okay, let's go ahead and focus on this piece for a little bit. Move these out of the way so I don't lose any screws. I talked about lubrication points on these. Let's just do the lubrication points real quick before that's something that we forget to do. And I like to use, down in the foot controller, I like to use kerosene because it's got a much higher flash point. And with the possibility of generating heat, you don't want to risk having something down here that could create a fire. This is one of our pivot points, obviously, right here. So I'm going to put a little bit of kerosene on the inside of there. Truth be told, I've got something in here along with the kerosene that adds even a little bit more lubrication. And we're going to grab our insulation pieces again. Put those back into place on the base. Creates a little bit of a buffer with the bottom of the ceramic. Better ventilation, keeps it a little bit cooler. And I like to shine a light down there just so I can see if I've got it lined up pretty well. Looks like I do. And we'll put our bolts back in. Hold this in place. We'll just do a quick wipe over those as well. Double check that your little insulators didn't move. They sometimes can shift out of position. Again, remember this is ceramic, so you want to make it nice and snug, but you don't want to put a crazy muscle into it, or even with this little flashing type washer on top that distributes the pressure evenly, you could crack it. So, get it nice and snug, but don't go crazy. And kind of like a tire, you kind of go back and forth to make it nice and even. You have to swivel one piece up real quick. This does require a little bit of fine tuning sometimes, so be patient as you're getting things into position properly. And now we're going to put this little brass piece on right here. The rounded part goes in first. And you have to kind of adjust it so you can fit this other piece over the top. A little bit more. There we go. Yeah, I'm just checking our end over here that I talked should be flush near the end. And we've got a real good position right now on that. So we don't have to make any adjustments. This would be our adjustment screw right here to either push it further in or to allow it to come further out. But we're in a real good position right now. So make one other adjustment here. Give me a second. I'm going to bring this out just a little bit further. There we go. I like the look of that better. What I was adjusting is the clearance between the connecting point here where it's going to hit these brass contacts, these right here, and the return, so that we don't have a situation where it's going to be too far out. Make one other quick adjustment here. Okay. We're going to add this little retainer cotter pin now to hold those together because I think we're in a fairly good position. I might make a couple more adjustments on it once I take it back out. And we just slid it in between there and there. I think you can see that. We're going to put these back on now. Well, my hands are to a point now where they're like, oh, let's take a break. Sometimes things take a little bit longer. That's okay. What's our time? 2:53. Okay. So that is all but assembled. I know I did some of that stuff where it was kind of out of view a little bit, but we're going to connect the wires and see if we have a working foot controller. And this is the original wiring that would have been with this foot controller. So I'll probably end up adding my crimp contacts at the end just so it's a little bit more secure. Now, if you're going to test a foot controller like this and you haven't put it all the way back together, remember that this is electrified as soon as I plug it into power. So it's got a danger element. I'm going to take the clutch out on the Centennial. And I have to find an open outlet somewhere. All right, let's turn it over this way. Act as if we're winding a bobbin. I have Susie's machine up on a Lazy Susan right now, and it's a little bit awkward. Let's see here. Well, that is a thumbnail sketch, at least, on how you can do a deep cleaning on your foot controller to make your machine run faster, and also to allow, I think that's right, also allow your foot controller to run cooler as well, which sometimes is a lot easier than adjusting the camera. But hopefully you found some of those tips helpful. I'm going to do a couple more adjustments on here, and also take it apart again and put those other discs on here to do a thorough cleaning on those. So that's about it. Remind me and we'll cover motors on a future live stream. Okay, take care. See ya. All right, take care, everybody. God bless and happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Take care.